Welcome, everyone, to Defending Our Children. We have on with us today a physical therapist with extensive education, background, and experience in it, Kathleen Stross. We're just going to unpack some things on what all goes on with our bodies, how it connects with trauma and stress. How do we apply that to safeguarding the little ones and empowering them? I think you're going to find this a very valuable show and discussion, and blesses everybody that hears it. So, Kathleen, thank you for all that you do out there to help people. Man, as a busted up veteran that's been harsh on my own body, I can appreciate somebody that has the extensive medical history to understand what we do to our bodies and how we help heal, and appreciate all the time and effort you put into your education and pouring into people. So not only thanks for that, but thanks for coming on the show and sharing it with us here. So welcome.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for this opportunity to come and share some of the things that my 30 plus years of experience in physical therapy allowed me to learn. I learned from every client, every patient, every adult, every child that I get to have the privilege of working with. Our bodies are sacred. They are the most precious thing we have. And today I thought I would talk a little bit about the connections between pain, trauma, and the brain. I love the education that you all do here in this organization. And this is one of the opportunities I have to share with people things they can address themselves to their adult self, but also share with their children as well. And so I'm going to jump in, and if there's anything that you want to ask me for clarification, please certainly do that. I want this to be conversational as much as possible. But I want to, acknowledge that we are born perfect. We are born with any emotional or trauma baggage in our brain. And we are made, in my opinion, by God to be the way He wants us to be. And as life happens to us, we lay down things in our experience. We lay things down in our brain from the experiences we have as we grow up. And that's how most of our responses are learned. Most of our learning occurs at a subconscious level. 90 to 95% of what we learn and do and how we behave is learned subconsciously through experiences.
Oh,
and
wow.
really only 5 to 10% of learning occurs during a conscious state, which is actually why my kid told me he slept through calculus class all the time. I was like, maybe I can get it this way, but really we are programmed from the very beginning by our experiences. They help us develop neural responses and pathways in our brain. And the more those things are experienced or reinforced, that allows us to turn neural pathways into wired freeways. We call it what learned is what fires together, wires together. That means that experience of touching something hot tells your brain not only reflexively that heat can be painful, but that, where was I? What was the situation here? What did I feel? What were my emotions? How did the consequences come? Maybe I heard someone yelling, don't do that, or are you okay? All those things start wiring and forming a matrix in our brain that it becomes an experience. It has memory attached to it. It has emotion. It has physical experience. And all that comes passively without us seeking that knowledge. So with exposure and frequency or repetition of certain things, we develop our experience. We develop our responses to the environment. We develop our attitude about our experience in the world. And that's really the foundation of learning. And I wanted to talk about the brains of people with trauma and chronic pain, because the brains of those people are different than controls who haven't had similar experiences. Chronic pain, not only, you had mentioned your beat of battle, but a lot of different things can cause people to experience chronic intense pain. And it changes the brain and the central processing. There have been many, many studies done about this. But when we look at brain patterns and networks, we see patterns of chronic pain the same as patterns of trauma and PTSD compared to control groups. So chronic pain and trauma and traumatic experiences shift the brain's neural networks. It turns some things up higher and it turns other things down lower. And that's an interesting concept, because I think of everything as being magnified or increased or negatively decreased or suppressed. Can you think of any activities that might be, increased with your experience with pain or trauma?
I could be here all day with it. And something that I've learned dealing with so many friends and family is that trauma, whatever we experience, man, it comes out. And like you said, it's subconscious. We're not always aware of how and why we're wired the way that we are. But I like to say we're a walking sum total of our life's experiences. And I've said this before. I walk into a room and my wife she has a startle response. Whenever someone walks into the room, she kind of jumps, and it breaks my heart because it was from childhood trauma on her end. And I wish I could take that away. I wish I could heal that for her. But I'm learning, man, since in the last 6 years since I've founded Vets for Child Rescue, I learned, man, trauma is deep, and it causes people to perceive so many things differently than what you pointed out, than we were supposed to, than we were designed to, because we have been through trauma physically and psychologically rewired. And so we fire differently from that trauma experience. And so I imagine a lot of it's about dealing with that and causing the healing, the better pathways to form. And I'll tell you one thing that's really, just in this last year, been changing my life. It's just the simple gratitude concept of just be in deep gratitude. And yes, that's biblical. It's simple in the Bible. It says in everything, give thanks. Well, if we would just take that as straight gospel, if you will, and just run with it, we'd be better off. But scientifically now, there's so much that's being learned about gratitude and physiological, manifestations of that, and how healing it actually is, and outlook, and how you perceive and function through everything. So yeah, there's a lot for us to talk about here, for sure.
There really, really is. Now, you've giving the audience a great picture into where I want to go in the next segments and talk more about the brain, what happens when bad things happen to us, and what we can do about it later.
Yeah, man. Well, what about, and you've mentioned refiring, rewire. I've heard Dr. Joe Dispenza online talk a little bit about that, and I appreciate it. I think he's onto something very important there. And, I think maybe unpacking gratitude and some of that may be really helpful, because I think it's something that I want everybody to benefit from.
Absolutely.
And it's just a great outlook. I know that I'm better in a day that I'm in a heart of gratitude than in a day when I'm too idealistic, which is how I tend to be. I want things to be better and want them to be perfectly. When they're not, I get a little frustrated. And then when I go back to realizing, hey man, I'm grateful just to be here. Let me think of all the things I'm grateful for. It changes everything. So
highlight was that the brains of people who've experienced trauma are a lot like the brains of people with PTSD and chronic pain. And chronic pain changes the brain, as does trauma and PTSD. And we talked about the idea of what fires together, wires together, meaning that our experiences do change our brain function. And I had hinted, I said, what do you think goes higher? Some things go higher or turned up, a heightened activity, and other things in the brain are decreased. You mentioned your wife walks into a room, she gets startled. That is called the salient mode. This is our scanning mode of our brain that says, look for differences, look for threats, stand by, be on high alert. And for those people who've experienced trauma, that's an increase. Their scanning and high alert is tuned way up high. And I think you would agree with that. And everybody who's experienced trauma would understand that that's an increased activity of that part of the brain. There's another part of the brain that's turned down, and that's in our subconscious brain. It's called our default brain. It just means the regulation of daily function. Just how am I getting around doing the things that need to happen subconsciously just to be well and just to function in the day-to-day activities? There's less neural activity in that part of the brain of just automatic activities. The other thing that I think people really experience, and it affects their work life, and decreased central executive functioning, memory, our ability to be rational and make rational decisions. Part of the brain, we always say right here behind the forehead is my executive function. That part of the brain is decreased. It doesn't light up in somebody who's had trauma or chronic pain or PTSD in the same way. So it's not just what happens to you and the memory of that, it's the impact that those brain changes can have on the rest of your life, on your quality of life. What we've understood, though, is that, it's not your conscious reaction to these things. This is subconscious laying down of changes in your brain and your body. And when people experience these traumatic events, it's not just that some things turn up higher, like heightened awareness, and some things turn down, like executive functioning, but there starts to be overlap of areas of the brain that weren't previously overlapped. What I mean is, and you're going to get this because you mentioned it earlier in lead up to this talk, is that there becomes an overlap between pain areas and emotion in the brain, PTSD, chronic pain, and trauma. So having not experienced trauma, for me, let's say, or someone like me, I can isolate pain. I can analyze it. I can think about it. I can respond to it in a way that's separate than emotions. People call me crazy and logical, right? You're so logical. You're so analytical. If you meet people like that who can completely say, well, yeah, I broke my finger, but that has nothing to do with what I need to do today, balancing my checkbook or doing my tax. So we can separate those. But if we've had an experience, unfortunate, like people maybe listening in the audience or those who've experienced trauma as a child, they don't have a choice but to connect emotion with pain and trauma. Would you agree that that's your experience with these survivors?
Yeah, it does seem to be the case. And they reach to every manner of mechanism to try to solve that or kill that pain. And a lot of those solutions are counterproductive.
Well, that's exactly where we're going. The first response is to have this heightened arousal, heightened fight or flight. You talk about fight, flight, or freeze. Other words are called hypervigilance. Like I know what's going on in my body everywhere and I can feel that. And so what I want to do is I want to lead people through an exercise real quick to experience this body scan and what comes to our awareness. So if you're driving, don't take your eyes off the road or your hands off the wheel. But if you're listening and you can, I want just to take this experience with me. Just sit calmly where you are, or be where your feet are is what I like to say. Be right where your feet are and just breathe and relax and feel. Feel gravity pulling you straight down into the surface that supports you. Begin with a few breaths, intentionally breathing in and breathing out. With the next few breaths, increase the length of your inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and exhale, even if it's a blow through pursed lips. Breathe in again, filling the bottom of your lungs with air. And then exhale. And I want you to begin to see what in your body is signaling to you that needs attention. Begin with your head. Is there anything in your head that is crying out for attention, is bothering you, is making itself known? Move down to your neck and your chest, looking through your body, seeing if your eyes are closed. Sometimes when you look at your body, you can see different colors in different parts of your body, or you can feel something different, positive or negative. It can be pain, it can be pleasant, but scan through your body now down to your pelvis. As you feel yourself anchored in your seat, feel your body supported on your pelvis or on your hips, on your sit bone, maybe your back supported in a chair, your shoulders, whether you're relaxed or not. Scan your body. Continue scanning into your legs. Now go back to your chest and feel your chest, your breath, your heart. Is it open and free? Is it crushed and compressed? Return back to me now, and I want to know if anyone would be willing to share that what they felt. Did you, Forrest or Craig, have any part of your body that made itself known to you in that body scan?
I did. Yeah, my neck, I've got several knots in my neck where there's stress and tension just due to a number of factors. And, I could feel that very distinctly. And I think this kind of personal awareness is important because, the Bible says your body's a temple. I'm understanding that a lot more now. I mean, literally, I've been doing a lot of cleansing and a lot of nutrition support and everything. And, in the SEAL teams, we looked at our body, well, it's just a chassis that you drive. Make it do what you want, what you need done, make your body do it, and it'll do it. And SEAL team training is based on the fact that your body could do more than 10 times what you initially think that it can. Well, that's true, but I would say you want to do that intelligently and do that in a way that you're not forcing it by forcing injury, work with your body more than against it, I guess is what I'm trying to convey.
I think you've got two options. You can make your body last your whole life and you can die with a healthy body. Or for many people who want to really, really live, they get one season to do that. You can be an elite athlete as a youth, you can be a warrior in midlife, or you can be a senior athlete. But I think you get one season to really push it to its maximal. I think it's very unusual for people to be able to get any more than that. So if you've spent it.
Well, I think I'm a walking testament to that. Good.
So we just completed this exercise where we did a body scan, and it's normal for people to experience a sensation in their body as you scan it and you look at it. But those with chronic pain or trauma, we said, have a hypervigilance or a heightened arousal. Maybe they can't return back to this exercise or listening to me and forget about their neck. I don't know, if you get busy again, can you forget about your neck, Craig, and let it leave you? It's not there constantly interfering with your ability to function, and that's a good thing. We talked about people having this fight, flight, or freeze with chronic pain, but the other thing that happens in trauma and chronic pain is disassociation. You mentioned the panic that can happen for people who having social anxiety. They enter a room, they're afraid of crowds or people or proximity, and that often leads to avoidance and withdrawal. Another protective response is isolating yourself from all threats. People might relate avoiding creating social anxiety. Maybe they substitute online relationships and online activities in place of being with people, actually being in the same physical space with people. Dissociation and withdrawal is one of those other things we see in people with trauma, chronic pain. And
so that's something we'd want to watch for our children. If our children start to withdraw, to get quiet, and that happened with our son years back. He was I think he was in 3rd grade, and he began this not loud, but a very gregarious, very happy boy who everybody would run to greet when we would drop him off at elementary school. He began getting very quiet. We didn't understand why, because everything was the same at home. And then we looked into the school and we learned that there was an abusive teacher who would pick one child a year and really psychologically torment and try to break down that child. And it was our child that this teacher had been preying upon. And we had to force the principal to fire that teacher. We made a big issue of it because we started learning from others around there that this guy was a serial predator in that way. And we noticed it simply by observing our happy child withdraw and get quiet. So I'm thankful that we picked up on that and took some investigative action. So that's one way that we can protect the little ones is look for that change of behavior and investigate.
We can, and it's a lot more than asking questions like, what is it? You seem to be withdrawn. Is there something bothering you? Can you imagine the mind of an inexperienced child not even having words to describe what they're feeling or why? Because they yet haven't learned what's normal behavior and what's abnormal behavior. We know from many of your shows and guests before that if you grow up in a very unhealthy environment, you still consider it normal because you don't know any difference. So the child doesn't know. One of the things that is helpful with kids too who do dissociate or are avoiding something, obviously you look for open windows on how to talk to them, but play therapy is really one of those important things. Getting dolls, mommies and daddies and teachers or school. So you could set up a situation where you had dolls in a school and see what happens there. Let them be the person. We used to play Barbies that way, and in therapy with children, you get dolls and you see what happens because you would see them demonstrate what they consider their normal experience in the classroom as a teacher degrading them.
Oh, that's clever. Yep.
You see, it would come out in the play.
I could see that.
And so sitting down with dolls and Barbies is really, really one of those ways where they will demonstrate to you what their experience is and that they're considering difficult for them.
Well, look, Kathleen, I'm sure anyone who's got kids can testify that when you try to pull out of your children what their day was like, what'd you learn today? How was your day? Yeah. That's about all you're going to get unless you really pull it out of them.
Yeah.
Horace?
Yeah, Kathleen, one thing that I would like to point out, and that is, and I'm guilty of this because growing up in grade school, I got into trouble a few times, and I had teachers that by today's standards, I would consider to be, pretty bad teachers, but man, we just had to suck it up. And so what happens is we compare as adults our life to our kids. And so when my kids complain about something like, well, if that's all you had to deal with, let me tell you about Mrs. Jones back in the 8th grade. So I think this is a trap that I fell in, that you can't do that. The world's a different place today than it was when we were growing up. And so is there something you can share on how we can better manage or navigate that dynamic?
I think we have learned a lot about how to talk to our kids in a better way. I think playing with them and being with them, go where they are, ask to observe. Many schools and classrooms have cameras or use cameras now. With my kids, tended not to believe them that the teacher was bad, misbehaving, unfair, or inattentive, or didn't care. And I used to think, they were making that up. But I'm sadly was wrong in cases. And I think today parents are waking up to becoming more involved in their kids' school and not thinking that, I don't know, I have a sort of a Pollyanna outlook. I think that people are good and teachers are good and all this, and it's not necessarily the case. So I would say trust your child and their instincts, ask about their feelings. How does it make them feel? Are you treated at school like you are at home? Do you feel like you're treated like other children? Because there are teachers who isolate certain kids and they are the bullies. And there are teachers who like boys better than girls, or kids that like this better than that, or they like left more than right. And my kids experienced all those things. And I started believing them and talking about how they felt. And sometimes the way to do that is at the dinner table to share a story about when you might have felt mistreated at work or in your day, or what you thought wasn't fair. And if you open up with a story about you, like, hey, I didn't think this was very fair. What do you think? Have you ever had anything that you felt like wasn't fair? And then they'll share. But I think we have to lead by example. We have to lead by telling stories and sharing our own experiences, and then asking them to share theirs. This helps the kids reconceptualize their experiences. Like with pain, and just circling back to what my conversation is, we try to figure out in our brain very naturally when we experience something uncomfortable, what's the problem? Why do I feel this way? How do I get rid of it? Why isn't it going away? Whether it's pain in our physical body or whether it's emotional pain of our child, they're trying to figure that out even at a young age, because the brain wants to feel good. It just wants to. It's why my tagline is feel good again. I'm going to show your brain how to help you feel good again. And it's normal for our brain to want to do that.
Well, I see where, I was going to just say, I see where people don't know how their bodies feel. That's why I think that exercise that you talked us through was so important. A lot of people can't tell you how their bodies feel until they sit down and pay attention to what the signals that it's giving them, because they're so busy, their bandwidth is maxed, and they override all the signals that the body's trying to give them. So I think it's important to listen.
It's very important. And the word mindfulness is one of those buzzwords now, and it's actually been studied, but it's the idea of resting, relaxing, the internal kind of scan that we did. That's all mindfulness, being where your feet are. Get your head where your feet are. Get your mind thinking about your body. Where is it? What is it happening? Focusing on your breath and being aware and turning symptoms to signals. So that's what we're going to do in the next segment, is talk about what is my body telling me, and what is a symptom, meaning a negative thing that leads to disease, distress, and disharmony, versus signals your body's saying, hey, pay attention to me. I need to tell you something.
All right, Kathleen, but to close this segment out very quickly, let us know where to find you and support what you do.
KathleenStross.com. It's my name, KathleenStross.com, for everyone to decide if they need my help, if that's the best help for them or not. And that number is 713 in the United States. It's 713-392-1303. Again, 713-392-1303. Feel free to give me a call, leave a confidential voice message. And usually I offer people a 15-minute introductory call it a discovery call, and we talk about what you need, what kind of services I provide. And with even well before COVID, I did a lot of telehealth and telehealth coaching. I'm a certified health coach and a practitioner of functional medicine and a doctor of physical therapy, term injured athlete, and pain and myofascial and neurological specialist. So I have a lot of experience in a lot of different things, being that I've practiced a long time, and my program has evolved over the years. So I welcome hearing from anybody who has a question about general health, fitness, those things. So thank you for this opportunity.
Absolutely. And I know Forrest and I played a lot of Southern Texas football growing up, so we're going to have our names on your list.
Yes.
No doubt.
I was a soccer player and played through college. And so I've already had a knee replacement in my young life, although I'm 50 something now, but I felt like it was early to have my knee replaced. So I get it. We must take care of our temples, you said. So, we don't forget about pain. And I'm just going to jump right in and talk about pain and memory. And our memories about pain have an impact on our tolerance to pain. If you hurt your leg, let's say that you have an acute injury, maybe a battle injury, an explosion or something, and you have a sudden trauma to your leg. The changes in memory and in the brain begin immediately. It actually increases your pain tolerance. You look down at your leg, maybe you see that it's been blown up, and you tolerate it. You continue to stay conscious. We call this you're in shock or whatever, but it increases your pain threshold, you see, in that sudden trauma. However, the memory, pain, long and short-term memory of pain, over time reduces the pain threshold. You can probably hear the train in the background. If you can, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, that would bring a lot of pain.
But I don't, it's the only sound you hear it a couple of times a day, and otherwise it's so quiet. Okay, but I'm on the 3rd floor, so the noise just comes straight to me. Okay, but the memories of pain. So the experience of pain increases the pain threshold. I can take it, right? But the memory of pain, that decreases our pain threshold because we want to avoid an experience of pain again. And have you ever heard of anticipatory anxiety?
Oh, yeah.
Like I'm going to anticipate this is going to happen. So I'm afraid of pain coming again. And that reduces our pain threshold. It makes us really sensitive, oversensitized sometimes. So people who've experienced it.
Let me confide something with you right now. You mentioned the train, and it's just interesting that happened because about 2 years out of high school, my very best friend was hit by a train. We'd been out to dinner with our dates one night, and anyway, law enforcement showed up to my house to let me know that he had been killed. He and his cousin had gone joyriding after we'd gone out, and they tried to run a train when they shouldn't have, and it killed him. And it was apparently a gruesome accident for the law enforcement too. And I'd known the law enforcement there where we'd grown up in and around the Woodlands, Texas, just north of Houston. And, I'd seen them at several major accidents. And when they told me that it was the worst accident they'd ever had to work, I always wanted to talk to them more about it. But this was at like 4 a.m. before I'd gone to work, that they'd come to actually tell my mom that I'd been killed because they thought I was with my friend TJ. We were inseparable. And since then, whenever I cross a train track, there's not a time that I see or hear a train or go across a track where I don't think about that loss. And so it's interesting how it anchors with us.
So, Craig, is there a physical part of that memory and that experience? So we have the sensation, or we have the stimulation. That was a train horn. The train horn comes into your ear. Your brain says, train horn takes me to the emotional part. See how those parts wired together? We talked about it last segment, where you wire together train horn with trauma, and it has an emotional attachment. And I wonder if there's a physical symptom there as well. Do you feel anything in your body when you hear the train horn and you think about losing TJ, if that, I got that right?
Yeah.
And the experience, and then you had a report from the first responders and you wanted to know more because you want to form a picture in your brain. It's very normal for us to say, I want to picture it. I want to see it. I want to know more. So does that affect your body? Do you feel it in your chest?
I haven't been aware of it physically affecting me, but as you talked about it now, I try to do what you described earlier in that
body
technique,
scan,
if you will, that body scan. And what I could feel was an anxiety and a tightness around my chest.
Yes.
And like a buzzing, like a zinging, an unwelcome, uncomfortable buzzing, that just an anxiety and a regret, not a regret, but just that sense of tragedy and loss.
So this is what we talked about, what fires together, wires together. This is your conditioned response because of your experience, and it can be rewired. We talked about some of the techniques. We talked about, well, let me review them again. Breathing. If you breathe now, having awareness of that tightness in your chest, I want you to think about it in a different way. Your body, you can say, oh my, you have integrated this somewhat because you said you weren't aware of it immediately upon the blowing of the train horn. You've integrated it somewhat, but let's say that you immediately said, oh my gosh, my chest is tight and I'm going to have an anxiety attack. I'm going to have a panic attack. I would have to work with your brain to rewire this to say, wait a minute, that's not a symptom. I'm about to have a panic attack. Instead, it's a signal. So you say, thank you, body, for giving me this signal of a tightened chest. Okay, so today your response was, I have a signal from my body. I feel that in my chest. Thank you for that. You suspend judgment of what your body's telling you. It's not negative or positive. It's just information. My body's just giving me information. Thank you for that information. You're telling me that there's an emotion attached to that train horn. I learned this. Thank you for letting me know that. Then I want you to be active in some way. You can, in thanking your body for what it just told you, you can move a little bit, you can breathe a little bit and see if you can soothe it. Can you soothe yourself? Can you move a little bit? Can you breathe a little bit? Can you touch yourself? Can you be reminded to keep your mind where your feet are right now? I'm not in that situation. I'm not hearing the first responders tell me about the gruesome thing they just saw in the loss of my friend that was here a minute ago and now he's not.
And I love how you interjected gratitude. Thank you. And what a big relief.
Yes. Well, you know what? Our best relationships that we have with people are ones where we're grateful for each other, for the gifts of each other. We see the good in our friends and acquaintances, and we're grateful for that. So in our relationship with our body, it is proven that for us to have a healthy relationship with ourselves, we must be grateful. And that is one way that we can take care of ourselves. And love ourselves. Those with trauma, especially physical trauma, have some additional trouble with that, unfortunately, because body sensations not always being pleasant or loving or safe. So when we want to rewire the brain, we can do that by reforming or reinterpreting, reconceptualizing what our body is saying to us. So we did this experience with you where you hear a train horn, you think of the terrible trauma of losing a friend, and it triggered a tightness in your chest. And I said, what if instead of panic mode or anxiety and increasing that feeling in your body, you just said, thank you for that. Thank you for that information. And then you would to breathe and relax, move and stretch, or whatever you need to do. You can reframe it also in your mind by just saying, thank you for that information. What do you need? I want to tell you that we have different parts of ourselves. We have an ability to comfort ourselves. And sometimes we comfort our self who was there to learn of the tragedy of our friend by being our present self, more mature self, or our observing self. I don't know if you've talked about parts before, but we have a physical part, we have a thinking part, and then we have an observer part. In our thinking part, we have a logical and an emotional. And in our physical part, we have these sensations in our body. And then we have this observer self who's sort of above it all, going, let me just see and look and be above all of that other things. And kind of, it's not really analytical, but it's just seeing above the clouds. I've had a client actually, as I take them through this process of neural recovery, they say, all of a sudden I feel like my head is above the water now. I can see. And that's what we want to use as our observer self. So if your observer self looks at your situation and says, I observe that my chest is tight. Thank you for that information. I'm grateful for having known. And I love people and I miss people when they're gone, and you're appreciative of that experience. So I think that your observer self can help you put it into perspective. Do you see that that is something that's possible?
Oh, absolutely. It's beautiful, Kathleen. Absolutely beautiful way to process that.
And you breathe it out and you think, oh, okay, thank you. Thank you. Every time I hear a train, I think about, did you say TJ?
Yes,
and I
ma'am.
want you to even think about now, when you hear a train signal, I want you to tell me first, before the accident happened, what was your favorite thing about it? What was your favorite memory you did? If you introduced me and you said, Kathleen, I'm going to tell you about my friend. This is why I love him. This is what I'm most thankful for about him. He blah, blah, blah. What is it? What is it? What is it?
Well, he would call me and he told me he felt like we were brothers, and he would call me, multiple times a day, just say, hey, what are you doing? How are you?
So he was your Jonathan. He was your friend. He was a good friend. So you can spend some time practicing now at the thoughts, because we want to rewire the train horn, go all the way to friend. What a friend. What a blessing it was in my life to have a friend like that, who used to just call me because he thought about me. I want to call people when I think about them. That helps them feel loved. So I want to do that. How grateful I am that I had a friend like him. You can rewire your reaction in your brain to that train horn.
I could see that'd be a very beautiful and healing way to transform that, back into gratitude and those positive memories.
And in the beginning, it's going to be hear the horn, experience the tightness of the chest, have some visuals or memories of the trauma. And then you're going to cognitively or actively, consciously take yourself to the gratitude and to the experience and the positive. And soon with practice, your brain will skip the intermediary sensation that's negative, because your brain wants to feel good again. It wants to feel good. It wants homeostasis. It wants balance. It wants peace. It wants contentment. It wants calm.
I like that.
You like it. Yes.
Yes.
That's it. The calm is the rest, the digest, the restore, recuperate, relax, the rejoice, the reinvent, the recover. So we want to reinterpret so that we can rest, relax, restore, recover over and over again. And our body can do that and rewire it. Absolutely, absolutely.
What a powerful technique.
I believe there is physical healing for everyone who experiences chronic pain and pain due to trauma. The anticipatory anxiety that comes to people because of their traumatic experience can be undone by trained professionals. I didn't know in my beginning early practice that I would be finding myself developing an expertise in this work. But my work with people with chronic dizziness and chronic vertigo and traumatic events caused me to get extensive training in this. And through my coaching practice, I've found great success in rewiring the brain, taking the power of the brain to remember things to the power of the brain to heal. And I believe that everybody has within them already what they need to heal themselves.
Well, I find myself anxious to share this with my kids. They're grown now, 24 and 20 years of age, but when you love people, you want them empowered, right? Knowledge is power. So you share with them the things that you wish you knew when you were younger. So what are some things that you think would allow us to help transfer some of this knowledge to the little ones? I love the technique, the body scan is fantastic. And
we're going to do that again in a new way during the last segment. And so I want you to see with new knowledge and new information how it can change your physical experience. Okay. When our kids tell us things about how they're feeling or how they're thinking, or they talk to us about their body feeling, I feel, a rumbling in my tummy. And you go, tell your body, thank you so much for letting you know that. What does that mean? What do you get from that? Well, it must mean I'm hungry. Okay, so just tell yourself now, we're going to have food in 30 minutes. Dinner, you don't need a snack if that's what you want to do. We're going to eat in 30 minutes. So tell your brain the food's coming. And then you can do that and they'll tell the food's coming soon. You're going to be okay. And then they've reinterpreted that from anxiety and panic. If they have food anxiety, what am I going to eat, whatever. And you can teach them to start having this dialogue with their body. The second thing is to teach them to touch themselves. Now, I believe in touch and comfort, and I think that people who have experienced trauma or experienced harm don't touch themselves. And I find it doing a lot of reintroducing people to touch. We need to teach our children to rub those bubbles when they hurt, to touch them. If you feel like, oh, I'm scared, feel your chest, feel your heart. Can you feel what happens when you get scared? What can I do about that? Take some deep breaths. And you practice with them and you show them how I can feel my body. I can be aware of it as a signal, not a symptom. And I can intervene to change my interpretation of that experience. Pain response as a learned response. Anxiety as a learned reaction, because the brain wants to automatically protect you from harm. Those are reflexes, but then the reactions that wire down in your brain that connect them with emotion and fear and memory and visuals and smells and sounds and the whole thing. And therapeutically, we can take you into those and rewire them in your brain. I've talked to you about taking symptoms and turning them into signals and thanking your body for information that it's giving you. So I want us to revisit and then talk about, we'll process it at the end. I want to go back and do the exercise we did at the beginning of the first segment, which was a body scan. And so wherever you are, whether you're seated, if you're seated and you're not driving, sit back in your chair, feel the back of your body in contact with the back of your chair. If you're driving, hang on to the wheel, keep your eyes open and on the road, and imagine how you're going to practice this when you get home. You can do some of it with your eyes open still. Continue to do that if you are driving. You'll be able to benefit from this. Feel your back in the chair. Feel your body in contact with the surface. Feel your hips as they hold the weight. Shift your weight to the right hip and to the left hip, and feel that you can distinguish between pressure in the right hip and the left hip. Find the center where you have equal pressure on right and left. That's where gravity pulls you straight down into the chair. And I want to do an alignment with you now where I want you to imagine that a string attaches to the top of your head and pulls straight up to the ceiling. Imagine a string pulls you up. Imagine a string pulls you up, how that changes your posture, and your head aligns over your shoulders, over your hips, on your sit bone. String pulls you up, gravity pulls you down. Ears are over shoulders or over the hips. You are lined up, you are in balance. Take your hands and put them under your rib cage, over your diaphragm. And as you breathe in, let your hands be pushed out by your diaphragm that fills your lungs with air. And as you exhale, feel your hands go in. Breathe in again. This is diaphragmatic breathing. It's the most effective way of breathing and telling your brain to rest, relax, restore, inspire. As you breathe in with the diaphragm lowering, your hands push out. And girls, I know this looks like ugly breathing, but this is the most healthy form of breathing when you stick your tummy out as you breathe in and as you exhale. Put pressure on your hand. Now breathe in with strength. That strong diaphragm pushes out your hand. Relax your hands on your diaphragm and let them rest on your belly as you breathe in and breathe out. Something called box breathing is a very therapeutic form of breathing where we breathe in for 4, hold for 4, blow out for 4, and hold for 4. Let's try it together. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, and hold. 2, 3, 4. Breathe out. 2, 3, 4, and hold. 2, 3, 4. We do a whole nother session on breath work because I have all kinds of training on that and how important it is. It brings you into that rest, restore, relax phase. We're going to return to the body scan now. And I want to see if now that you know that your body speaks to you and give you signals and information, and that you have a relationship of gratitude with your body, and you say, thank you for letting me feel my breath. Now let me see what else you want to tell me. Scan your body beginning at your head. your shoulder, chest. Take your time. Don't let me rush you as you scan through your body, looking for information. You're looking for information, signals that will tell your body, that your body will tell your brain. I'm sorry, body will tell you. It's just information. Thank you for talking to me. Thank you for telling me what you need. Am I hungry? Is that what that means? I feel my tummy. Thank you for that information. Those big breaths were nice and cleansing. Thank you for the ability to breathe. If you feel tension in your shoulders, thank you for telling me that. Thank you for that information. I promise to consider that, promise to pay attention to that, and to comfort that feeling of tension in my shoulders. Thank you for that information. I promise to take care of that. If something comes to mind that previously would have bothered you, made you feel bad, feel scared, feel afraid, if I'm feeling or a thought that you can't get rid of, let's reframe that. Thank you for coming to mind. Thank you for that. Thank you. I'm not going to judge that thought. I'm going to just receive it. So we're suspending judgment as we scan our mind and our body. I want you to stay in your body if you can. Stay where your feet are. If your mind wanders, go back to the hand on the diaphragm and the breath. And I want to hear from those. I want you to consider, if you're listening, if reframing and reinterpreting the experience you had with your body changed your response. If bringing gratitude for your body into practice and a curiosity to your body scan, a curiosity and no judgment, if it changes the way you interpret how your body. What do you think, Forrest, Craig?
I think so. I think just slowing down and paying attention is good. I think it's healthy and good. Our society is bombarded with too much stimulation, and I think this kind of technique is very, very important. I encourage everybody to not only go to your website and tune in and learn more, but listen to this broadcast again and share it with your children, share it with everybody that you care about. Folks, that is all the time that we have for today, but we are grateful for Dr. Kathleen Stross and everything that she's given, everything that she's shared here today. So, Doctor, thank you so much for coming and sharing all that with us. And we wish you nothing but blessings wherever you go and all that you do.
You guys keep up the good work you're doing. You're my heroes.
All right, folks,
Thank
there
you.
you've heard it. Back and join us next time on Defending Our Children.